Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. We're studying from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, entitled Remembrance of Lord Krishna. We're on text 14. It's May 8th, 2022. Birthday of Abhimanyu Wolf.
Hey.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so text 14. Yasya
Yasya
Anuraga
Anuraga
Pluta
Pluta
Hasa
Hasa
Rasa
Rasa
Lila
Lila
Avaloka
Aloka
Pratilabdha
Patilabda
Mana
Mana
Vrajastriya
Rajashriya
Drigbi
Tripi
Anupravita
Anupavita
Diya
Diya
Avatastu
Avatastu
Kila
Kila
Kritya Shesha
Vidyashesha
Yasyanuraga Plutaha Sarasa
Yasyanuraga Pito Apsavasa
Lila Valoka Pratilabdhamana
Lila Valoka Pratilabdhamana
Prajastriyo Drigbir Anupravita
Vajastriya Dikviranu Pravita
Diyovatushtu Kila Kritya Shesha
Diyo Vatushtu Kila Kritya Sheshaha
Yasyanuraga Plutaha Sarasa
Yasyanuraga Pito Asarasa
Lila Valoka Pratilabdhamana
Lila Valoka Pratilabdhamana
Prajastriya Drigbir Anupravita
Vajastriya Dikviranu Pravita
Diyovatustu Kila Kritya Shesha
Diyo Vatushtu Kila Kritya Shesha
Yasyanuraga Plutaha Sarasa
Yasyanuraga Pito Asarasa
Lila Valoka Pratilabdhamana
Lila Valoka Pratilabdhamana
Prajastriya Drigbir Anupravita
Vajastriya Dikviranu Pravita
Diyovatustu Kila Kritya Shesha
Diyo Vatushtu Kila Kritya Shesha Yasyanuraga Pito Asarasa
Yasyanuraga Plutaha Sarasa
Valoka Pratilabdhamana
Lila Valoka Pratilabdhamana
Vajastriya Dikviranu Pravita
Rajastriyo Drigbir Anupravita
Diyo Vatastu Kila Kritya Sheshaha
Diyovatastu Kila Kritya Shesha
Yasyanuraga Plutaha Sarasa
Yasyanuraga Plutaha Sarasa
Lila Valoka Pratilabdhamana
Lila Valoka Pratilabdhanata
Rajostriyo Dikviranu Pravita
Rajastriyo Drigbir Anupravita
Diyo Vatastu Kila Kritya Shesha
Diyovatastu Kila Kritya Shesha
Yasyanuraga Plutaha Sarasa
Yasyanuraga Plutaha Sarasa
Lila Valoka Pratilabdhamana
Lavaloka Pratilabdhamana
Rajastriyo Dirgbiranu Pravrita
Rajastriyo Drigbir Anupravita
Diyo Vatastu Kila Krita Sesha
Diyovatastu Kila Kritya Shesha Would anyone online like to recite the verse?
Yasyanuraga Plutaha Sarasa
Yasyanuraga Plutaha Sarasa
Lila Valoka Pratilabdhamana
Lila Valoka Patilabdhamana
Vrajastriyodrig Biranu Pravrita
Vajastri Ojikiranu Pravrita
Diyo Vatastu Kila Kritya Shesha
Diyo Vatastu Kila Kritya Shesha Yasya,
Yasya.
whose,
Whose.
Anuraga,
Anuraga.
attachment,
Attachment.
Pluta,
Pluta.
enhanced by,
Enhanced by.
Hasa,
Asa.
laughter,
Laughter.
Rasa,
Rasa.
humors,
Humors.
Lila,
Lila.
pastime,
Pastimes.
Avaloka,
Avaloka.
glancing,
Glancing.
Pratilabdha,
Pratilabdha.
obtained thereof,
Obtained thereof.
Mana,
Mana.
anguished,
Anguished.
Vrajastriya,
Rajastriya.
damsels of Raja,
Damsels of Raja.
Drigbi,
Trigvi.
with the eyes,
The eyes.
Anupravrita,
Anupravrita.
following,
Following.
Diya,
Diya.
by intelligence,
By intelligence.
Avatastu,
Avadastu.
sat silently,
Silently.
Kila,
Kila.
indeed,
Indeed.
Kritya Shesha,
Kritya Shesha.
without finishing household duties.
Without finishing household duties.
Translation. The damsels of Raja, after pastimes of laughter, humor, and exchanges of glances, were anguished when Krishna left them. They used to follow him with their eyes, and thus they sat down with stunned intelligence and could not finish their household duties. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 14. In his boyhood at Vrindavan, Lord Krishna was notorious as a teasing friend in transcendental love to all the girls his age. His love for them was so intense that there is no comparison to that ecstasy. And the damsels of Raja were so much attached to him that their affection excelled that of the great demigods like Brahma and Shiva. Lord Krishna finally admitted his defeat before the transcendental affection of the gopis and declared that he was unable to repay them for their unalloyed affection. Although the gopis were seemingly anguished by the Lord's teasing behavior when Krishna would leave them, they could not tolerate the separation and used to follow him with their eyes and minds. They were so stunned by the situation that they could not finish their household duties. No one could excel him even in the dealing of love exchange between boys and girls. It is said in the revealed scriptures that Lord Krishna personally never goes beyond the boundary of Vrindavan. He remains there eternally because of the transcendental love of the inhabitants. Thus, even though he is not visible at present, he is not away from Vrindavan for a moment. Om Angana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Caitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Bacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraya. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supremose human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yutamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 14. Yasyaniraga Plutaha Sarasa Lila Valoka Pratilabdhamana Prajastriyo Drigbir Anu Pravita Diovatas Kilakritya Shesha. The damsels of Raja, after pastimes of laughter, humor, and exchanges of glances, were anguished when Krishna left them. They used to follow him with their eyes, and thus they sat down with stunned intelligence and could not finish their household duties. And Prabhupada's first line of his purport: in his boyhood at Vrindavan, Lord Krishna was notorious as a teasing friend in transcendental love to all the girls his age. Okay, so notorious means having a very bad reputation. Having a very bad reputation. So we're talking here about God, who is all good. What's going on here? Right. So Prabhupada, spiritual master, saying Lord Krishna was notorious. He had a bad reputation. So Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna, he says, Dvaite Bhadra Bhadra Gyana Sabo Manodharm. He said this idea of good and bad in the material sense, this is all a mistake. It's all a mistake. And then there's transcendental good, absolute good. And that's anything that moves the soul towards a devotional turning towards a devotional turning of enthusiasm to serve Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if fear does that, then it's good. If anger does that, it's good. If teasing does that, then it's absolutely good. There's a text in the Bhagavatam. Yasasti bhakti bhagavati kinchana sarvera gunes tatra samasate sara harav bhaktyasa kutum mahadguna manoratena sati davato bahi. And that describes that one may have so many apparently good qualities at the same time, if they're not connected in devotional service, then they're really empty. There's no actual good in them, whether it's compassion or kindness or whatever, good qualities. And by engaging in devotional service, then the sincere devotee naturally develops all genuinely auspicious qualities. Because we don't want to misunderstand that it is, yes, by engaging in the transcendental process of devotional service, then naturally one develops all auspicious qualities. And being affected in the modes of material nature, it is part of our endeavors in devotional service to specifically cultivate qualities of goodness, not to neglect them in the name of I'm a devotee. That becomes philosophical bypass, spiritual bypass. And so it's a fact. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samati gaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. By engaging in social devotional service, one is transcendental to the modes of nature. So like we're chanting japa, we're transcendental to the modes of nature to the extent that we're absorbed in the activity. We're hearing or speaking Srimad Bhagavatam, it's transcendental. Prabhupada gives the example that like, okay, so we might be engaged, but like, let's say if we're in an ocean and we're struggling in an ocean, and we're going to struggle in water, just like a fish will struggle in land, even if we're a good swimmer. In water, we're going to struggle. Okay, but then let's say a boat comes along and we get, maybe it's a rowboat or a canoe or something, and we get on the boat or the canoe. So then that's it. We are transcendental to the water. We're transcendental. We might just be 1 inch above the water. We might be just 1 inch above the water, but we are transcendent to it. We're not struggling. At the same time, Prabhupada makes the point, okay, but with whether it's a canoe or the Titanic, some wave or iceberg, and then we're back in the water again, and we're drowning and we're struggling. So we might be 1 inch above the water, and that's a great relief, but that's different than being really safe on dry land. Okay, that's the really secure position where we no longer have an attraction to Maya. Okay, and so Prabhupada said, he would say, his greatest anxiety is that his followers are not scared enough of Maya. We assume because we're engaging in some of these processes we get from Prabhupada, maybe we're that 1/2 inch above the water sometimes, like during parts of morning program or something like that. Okay, but then it's like, oh, that's it, I got it. I'm transcendental. Then pretty quickly we're smashed. Pride comes before the fall. So that's like a healthy fear. So okay, so this teasing, right? In this flirtation, right? This is flirtation. So this is absolutely good flirtation. This is absolutely good flirtation. Okay, so this isn't the sort of flirtation that entangles us further in the illusion that I am this body. Okay. So Prabhupada, he wrote a poem glorifying his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And Bhaktisiddhanta appreciated the poem so much, and particularly one couplet where Prabhupada writes, absolute is sentient, thou hast proved, impersonal calamity, thou hast moved. So Bhaktisiddhanta, like from that little couplet, just like brilliant, succinct, absolute is sentient, thou hast moved, impersonal calamity. Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved, impersonal calamity, thou hast moved. Bhaktisiddhanta says, this Abhay Charan, he really understands my mission. He gets me. He gets me deeply and fully. And yes, so this was back in 1933 or something. So, yeah. So Bhaktisiddhanta, he gets my mission. To that mission, Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarade. Prabhupada came to the West all over the world to preach Pracharine, to give the message of Lord Caitanya in these lands which are so full of impersonalism and voidism. So here we have, okay. So this is the topmost realization of the absolute, right? These damsels and Krishna engaging in this flirtation. If we just read it, pastimes of laughter, humor, and exchanges of glances. They were anguished when Krishna left them, right? They used to follow him with their eyes, and thus they sat down with stunned intelligence and could not finish their household duties. Okay, right. So, okay, so absolute is sentient, which means the absolute has senses, absolute has personality, absolute has relation to absolute personality. Thou hast proved in personal calamity, thou hast moved. So So it makes sense that the summum bonum, the absolute, what happened? Because we see, okay, we're attracted in our material life to these sorts of activities. We're attracted to these sorts of activities. So where does that attraction come from? Bhagavatam starts with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Then after that, it goes to Janmadhyasayatvam Bhayamitrateshta. So it means that everything that exists in the effect, right? We can understand something about the absolute, about God, by studying ourselves. Okay, so we're attracted to these sorts of activities. We're attracted to sports, to adventurous activities, to friendship activities. We're attracted, right? So what exists in the effect must exist in the source. So, right? So we want satisfying relationships. Okay, but if I become really spiritual, then I will. No. So that's why Prabhupada says in that impersonal calamity. Right? So any sort of approach to spirituality, any sort of philosophy that's just about negating the material, but doesn't give a sense of positive spiritual relationship, spiritual form. Right? We use that example, like, well, Krishna's example in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the banyan tree. Right? It's because there's a tree with its branches down and its roots up. Well, where do you get that? When we're looking at the other side, we're standing on a riverbank or a lake. We look at the other side and we look at the reflection. On the other side, there's a tree, and the reflection branches down, roots up. Right? So trying to enjoy the reflection. That's what we're trying to do here. The reflection of these romantic relationships, the reflection of friendship, the reflection of happy family life. Right? And I was reading in the 7th canto, Prabhupada has a purport, something like he talks about material life is Durga, is like Durga, a prison. So it's like family life. In material world, family life is a combination, a collection of persons who've come together to complete their terms of imprisonment, living under the same roof. I'm paraphrasing, but more or less that's what he says. Okay, so but we all want happy family life. Okay, right. So we all want, and so that does exist. You can say no, but okay. So in the reflection, like if there's the reflected fruit, a mango tree or a fig tree, and we just go for the reflected, there's no substance there. We can't say the reflection doesn't exist. It exists as a reflection, just like we look in the mirror. Well, I mean, the reflection exists, but there's no substance there. It's okay. But the reflection indicates there is substance. In the purport, in the 15th chapter, Prabhupada uses a geometrical metaphor or description. He goes like, okay, so the impersonalist or voidist, they understand 180% of the circle, but a circle has 180 degrees, but a circle has 360 degrees. Okay, so the 180, like, yeah, this is false. Right? There's no substance here. So, and but negation of matter in itself is not spiritual. Okay, negation of matter. So there is a real tree. There's the other 180 degrees. That's the real banyan tree. So this is the substantial romance. There's substantial friendships, substantial forms, substantial relationships. And in personal calamity, thou hast moved, because as spirit souls, we want ananda. We want to be blissful in relationship. We want to be blissful in relationship. So yes, so everything that exists here, this is like the shadow, the distorted form. And just like a shadow exists because there is something substantial. Okay. So this whole process of bhakti yoga is cultivating non-attachment to the shadow and getting attached to the real tree, to real substantial relationships that fulfill the soul. Basic. So Janmanyasya Yata, what exists in the effect must exist in the source. And Yeah, yeah. And so we have personality, so our source must have personality. What's the nature of that personality? That's being revealed by Uddhava here. What's the nature of the pastimes of the absolute? As a basic physics, the principle of entropy, right? So the whole idea that, okay, there's all this personality and and high levels of organization, these bodies, the leaves of a tree, very high levels of organization, all right? So the idea that it started from nothing, or started from an explosion, there was like a lower level of organization leads to a higher level of organization. That doesn't happen, okay? Or, okay, in the primordial soup, some proteins came together and formed an amoeba who formed higher and higher level to from the monkey into humans. Okay, like that. Well, no, it goes against the basic principles even of material physics. So things of lower level organization, they come to higher level of organization when there's the input of a conscious being. So that's the Vedic version, when there's an input of the conscious being. Basic example, like let's say if the kitchen is a mess and dirty dishes and it's all a mess. So if everyone in the household just does nothing, we all know next morning the kitchen will be sparkling, clean, and neat. No, it doesn't actually work that way. No, it requires some conscious entity or a team of conscious entities to like, okay, let's bring this to a higher level of cleanliness and organization. Okay, so we have these desires and they start in the Supreme. So, all right, then, so the idea that the Supreme God could not do this. Well, if God has form, then it's limited. No, to say that God can have form, that's trying to limit God. Okay, but now to understand what's the nature of it, it's an unlimited form. It's a form that's not limited by the 9 dots, by the tiny box of our conceptions of time and space. Okay, so so to say, well, God would not engage in these sorts of flirtatious activities. So logically, are we saying cannot? Should we all make lists of things God cannot do, which basically is asserting, I am God. I am superior to God because I'm making a list, just like I'm making this, like a parent. You use that analogy. Recently had that discussion, right? Like, we have a parent like, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do on Friday nights or whatever. And so basically, I'm putting myself in the superior position of the absolute, which makes me the supreme entity. Okay, because well, of course, God could do it, but he wouldn't just like laugh and joke and like tease these girls. I mean, okay, well, how do you know? Did you get like a flash of light while you were like walking in Alachua one day that God doesn't do? I mean, how do you know? Once you're opening up to, well, God could. So now we have information, and because like, okay, like Vedas, the whole idea of Vedas is becoming more and more popular. People know Vedas, yoga, right? Compared to, let's say, the 1950s, like everyone knows something about yoga now and mantra and dharma and the whole Vedic thing. Okay, all right. So what are these Vedas? This is important related to this verse, because all this Veda means knowledge, but in terms of these ancient literatures. So these Vedas, these are well, books, but it's not book in our ordinary sense. That's called, this is transpersonal authorship, right? So Srila Vyasadeva, who's a literary incarnation of Krishna himself, Krishna says in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he says, I'm the compiler of the Vedas. What's that mean? In my form as the literary incarnation of Vyasadeva. Okay, so Vyasadeva is the compiler of all the Vedas. Okay, all the Upanishads. Right? It's like a cool thing, the Upanishads or something. The Upanishads, and the Rig Veda, and the Athar Veda, and the Puranas. Okay, right. So the goal, the goal of all the Vedas, and the culmination of all the Vedas, the goal of all of it, all the yoga systems, all the asanas, the goal of all the jnana, the goal of all of it is this teasing. The damsels of Raja, after pastimes of laughter, humor, and exchanges of glances, were anguished when Krishna left them. They used to follow him with their eyes, and thus they sat down with stunned intelligence and could not finish their household duties. Okay. So Vyasadeva, he's this, like, I mean, to say great sage and scholar is an understatement. Okay, he's the literary, the most prolific, greatest writer in history, for sure. And yeah, and so Vyasadeva, yeah, so he compiled the Vedas, and then I think everyone here is familiar with the basic story. He wasn't satisfied. His spiritual master Narada Muni said, "You're not satisfied." So they had some dialogue, and then as a result, Vyasadeva, he went into a trance. It's called a trance of bhakti. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak prana hite male apasha pusham purna. And yes, that apasha pusham purna. Yes, and he saw in his trance of bhakti. Chayat apashrayat. He saw in his trance of bhakti the absolute, and the absolute was not the void. It was not the most complete realization of the absolute. It was Krishna and the gopis. It was the personality of Godhead Krishna as the source of the oneness. So again, this, like, my opinion is not worth anything, but this is like, if anyone is connecting with yoga or anything Vedic, so this is just important knowledge to me. Okay, well, yoga, where'd that come from? What's the origin of you? Oh, these are, if someone's not ready to accept that this is timeless, eternal literature, but actually all this, like Bhagavad Gita, well, this is given to us by Srila Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva inspires Sanjaya to have what Prabhupada calls mystic television, transcendental television, and Sanjaya is viewing the scene of Arjuna and Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So it's all inspired by Vyasadeva, and like that, right? So Vyasadeva vision is that, yes, so that means that so Vyasadeva, he has no interest. He has no interest in Harlequin romance novels. He has no interest in soap opera. Okay. Well, then why is he interested here? Okay. You're shaking it, but like Mahabharat's all soap opera and stuff like that. Yes. So and that's so and yes, Yasti Bhakti Bhagavad Kinchana Sarve Gunista Jasamasa Satesara. Yeah, so he gave us all those other literatures to lead to this. And in that conversation with Narada Muni, whether we're talking about Mahabharat for those who like soap opera, intrigue, politics, romance, and for those who like, rigorous intellectual study, Upanishads, the Puranas, the histories, he gave us all that to lead to these pastimes of Krishna and Vrindavan. And then in his discussion with Narada Muni says, Yat tat vayasam tirtam. He says, all that literature you compose, all those books, they're like pilgrimage places for crows. They're like pilgrimage places for crows. Yeah. Right. And again, so we're not talking about just trashy literature we might find. This is the Vedas. But because now everyone says, they're going to miss the point. People are there, they're still going to miss the point. We know what you're trying to lead them to, but they're not going to get it. So as a result, so the Narada Muni went on, Tadvad Visargo Janataga Viplago Pati Yasmin Patishloka Yabadi Avatyapi Namanyananta Shun Kintalia Shunvanti Gayanti Shunvanti Shunvanti Gayanti Shanti. So thank you, Rukmini. Sadhava. Yeah, thank Sadhava. Yeah, the sadhus, the sadhus, they relish hearing pastimes. They relish hearing Bhagavatam. And so and this sort of literature that's not about material soap opera and stuff. This Bhagavatam is meant to create a viplava, a revolution in the impious lives of a misdirected civilization in this Kali Yuga. So as a result, Vyasadeva, from his compassion, and Arto Pashamam Sakshat, he saw people are suffering from so many unwanted things. Arta means unwanted, means wanted thing, anarta, unwanted things in the heart, in the consciousness, suffering from so many unwanted things, the basis of which Yaya Samohito Jiva Atmakam Chi Gunatmakam Pavopi Mante Narta Tatkritam Chabipajite, because of misidentification of the eternal spirit self with the body, unwanted things. Bhakti Yoga Madhokshaje Lokasya Janatad Bigvam Chakre Satvita Samhita. So as a result, he revealed, we can't say he wrote he revealed the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. And the Srimad Bhagavatam culminates in the 10th canto, and you might say the cynosaurs of 4 or 5 chapters, chapters 29 to 32 or 33 of the 10th canto. And that's like this, those chapters are all an expansion of this one verse, those chapters in the 10th canto. And we're advised to study Bhagavatam systematically. So this is Vyasadeva. Srila Sukadeva Goswami, he was realized sage. He was realized impersonalist, and he had no interest in anything material. But he Atmaramas Chamunaya Yugantiap Yurukrame Kravanti Tukim Bhakti Itam Buddha Gudo Hari. Srila Sukadeva Goswami, he was chosen to speak Bhagavatam, and but so he was complete. He had no material desire. And he was attracted to hear and speak about Krishna and the gopis. So what's that mean? It means that this isn't material pastime. And that's like, you might say, Mayavadi is to make Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan or Vishnu's pastimes in Vaikuntha, or when Krishna appears here in Gokula Vrindavan, that, they're like material pastimes, maybe more sattvic or whatever, but they're material. And like trying to bring spirit to the level of matter. And then Sahajya is similar, but opposite. Sahajya is thinking that my romantic activities, that's just like Krishna's. That's just like Radha Krishna. So it's very dangerous for one's spiritual life to go there. My activity is in essence, Sahajya is like regarding ourselves as more advanced than we are. And it can take some, rather.
Confusing spirituality with material.
Yes, yeah. I was thinking that my relationships, which are actually material, or so trying to bring matter to the level of spirit, it's like Sahajya. And Mayavad is like trying to bring spirit down to the level of matter. So same basic, different approaches to the trying to equalize ourselves with the Sri Krishna Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Shukadeva Goswami, he had no interest in anything material. Right? He had no interest. So at the same time, he's like so excited to hear and chant about Mother Yashoda and Krishna, and Mother Yashoda chasing Krishna with the robe. These are just children's stories. No, it means they're not material. They're not material. And these are the Vedic personalities. Lord Caitanya, the 6 Goswamis, look, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right, so he was known as a very, very staunch, strict sannyasi, very staunch, strict sannyasi. Okay, and Gopi Bhartu Padakamalira Dasa Dasa, and he aspires, well, he aspires to be a servant, the servant of the master of the gopis. So he's giving us, he emphasizes, the gopis are the greatest. Well, they're girls engaged in flirtation. No, that's the thing. So that it's a mistake to think that way. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. So, absolute sentient, that was proven personal. I mean, that has moved. In speaking on this verse, I'm thinking of in the fourth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 10th verse. It's a 10th, yeah. Prabhupada has it's a purport I'm inspired to reference a lot. The verse is Vitaraga Bhayakroda Manmaya Mamu Pasritya Bhavo Gyanatapasa Putamad Bhavamagata. So Krishna talks about those who are freed from fear, anger, and attachment. In knowledge of me, they achieve great love for me. So in the purport, Prabhupada talks about the psychology, because just till now in the class, we've discussed from perspectives of personal experience, logic, and Shastra, and these Vedic realized souls, how it all makes sense that God's a person, that the supreme, that the substratum of all existence is transcendental person. So then Prabhupada analyzes in that purport, Bhagavad Gita 4.10, different reasons why people reject this. And one, and it relates to Vitaraga Bhayakroda, one we're just materially attached. I'm just attached to the shadow. And even though I'm frustrated, I'm not frustrated because I'm doing better than others. I have a high level of survival, okay, compared to others. And so I'm just too materially attached. So I'm just not gonna get real interested or enthused about the real banyan tree. I'm just too attached to chasing that carrot on the stick. And again, maybe I'm it'd be like the pig in mud eating slop. I'm thinking it's pretty happy. And we're thinking, imagine if my life was in mud eating slop. Oh, that's terrible. But that's what conditioning means. Like the pig is conditioned, like this is good stuff. This is good stuff, as a pig. As a pig. But then the demigods are looking at our levels of enjoyment. And they're like, oh, God. So conditioning means like something that, no, this is really terrible. But no, it's very good. It's called Avranatmika Shakti. It's a facet of Maya, to convince us that we're happy in the slop. So yeah, so Prabhupada talked about just too much material attachment. We're not going to take to devotional service. We're not going to come to any sort of like substantial acceptance of the absolute, the sentient nature of the absolute, the personal nature of the absolute. And Prabhupada goes on that there could be some who maybe, that maybe there's some realization of this is all like the shadow world, right? The shadow world. There's no substance in material life. Yes. And then within the conception of the absolute, it's a real conception, but not the most comprehensive conception. Vedanti tattvavidas tattvamyav ganamabhaya brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. Describe, three realizations of the absolute. It's all one absolute. But there's like impersonal, there's God in the heart, and then there's Bhagavan, Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Bhagavan encompasses the energy. And so like in this world, right, it's safe to say, everyone has experience of a lot of frustration and bitterness in relationships. Right? Everyone has frustration, misery, and bitterness, and shame, and just all this, very disturbing experiences in relationships. So then we think, okay, so yeah, so I don't want to just like keep trying. I don't want to just keep chasing this shadow, chasing this carrot on the stick. I'm finished with relationships. And then the idea, okay, well, like Vyasadev's ultimate Vedic conclusion that, okay, so eternity, again, eternity essentially doesn't mean a very, very long time. Eternity means outside of time altogether. So that highest level of spiritual realization is you're eternally in relationship. Yeah, so
Whoa.
it doesn't sound like bliss. That sounds like hellish torment, eternally in relation. So Prabhupada discusses that psychology.
We need relationship skills.
Yeah.
If we're heading for.
Yeah, for heading for that. Yeah, right. So then that's Prabhupada discussed. That's why for some people, out of fear of relationship, like, oh, this is hellish stuff. Yeah, this is hellish stuff because I've suffered misery in relationship, and maybe including and especially romantic relations. And betrayed me, or my romantic partner, just and these we're making jokes, but these things result in murder often. I mean, heavy suffering. So out of fear of relationship, then a philosophy where, well, the ultimate realization of the absolute, then we're all one. Because if it's all one, there's no relationship. Relationship means a voluntary exchange of love and affection and service between two entities, two conscious entities. So it's all one. It's all one. No more relationship. So Prabhupada just kind of, because out of fear, based on my material experience, I'm going to reject any philosophy that says it's about spiritual relationship. But so in that all oneness, if we actually practice a rigorous path, we might get some detachment from matter. Nice. But we won't be satisfied. Because we're such a none. Our nature is to be blissful in relationship. And so there's a real banyan tree. Another analogy Prabhupada uses. I've been using this one a lot recently. Just like there can be a mirage in the desert, a mirage of an oasis, and an animal, maybe a human, but and Prabhupada says animal. It might be, it's just 50 yards away. There's some water. There's an oasis, but it's not there. Oh, it's 100 yards in that direction. And then eventually the animal dies. The animal dies of heat and exhaustion because there's no water. But that's not true. There is water. There's just not water in the desert. Okay. So in material life, there's no water that really satisfies the soul. But there is a real banyan tree. There is water, and that's in these transcendental, these trans-phenomenal, trans-empirical pastimes. Transcendental, trans-empirical doesn't mean we can't realize them. It means we won't be able to wrap our mind around them with material mind, but through bhakti mama vijanati yavanyas chasmitavata tato mam tatpata yatva vishate tadanatra. So Krishna says, by devotional service, we engage in devotional service, we can realize these pastimes. And then in Prabhupada's psychological analysis, he goes further. He goes, okay, and then there are some who, so maybe like, they've not material attachment so much, but like, yes, I'll take to this spiritual path where it's all merging. But then people have experience of getting cheated in the name of spiritual life. There's a lot of cheating going on in spiritual life, and then people become bitter and resentful and cynical. And they become so angry. Once Prabhupada was in Amsterdam, and Amsterdam was like a center of the whole hippie movement and things like that. I remember when I backpacked around Europe in 1983, and I was on a Eurail pass. I paid a certain amount at the beginning of the summer, and for 4 months I could go wherever I went. So I got off at Amsterdam, and I went to there was a youth hostel, and I entered the youth hostel, and right in the lobby, there was a sign that said, no drug dealing in the lobby. They had their principles. If you do drug dealing here, do it in your rooms, but not in the lobby. They had their principles. And no, it was a sign, I remember it specifically. So that was 1983. So Prabhupada was there in Amsterdam, I don't know what it was, maybe late 60s, early 70s. And, says, hippie. And Prabhupada said, we need to get Krishna conscious to them before they become too cynical. Because you could see these were, people almost all young adults, teenagers, 20s. And they were, legitimately frustrated with material life and, let's just call it mainstream establishment material life. Okay. And then they were doing, trying to be spiritual through other forms of material life, different, not like that, free sex and drug, like that. And Prabhupada could see that, but they want something spiritual, but they're going to get cheated again and again in the name of spiritual. He said, and then they're going to become cynical. And then even if they get the genuine article, they won't accept it because they're just too shut down. So we need to get Krishna conscious before they become too cynical. So yeah, they become cynical, angry, like that. So okay, yeah. So this is this verse where this gets to really the most secret of all secrets. It's an open secret, but this is the this gets to the essence of the essence of the soul's spiritual journey. The soul's spiritual journey, and to see, like, it's not a fairy tale, it's not mundane, it's not some pseudo mystical, it's not pretending that my lusty desires are spiritual. To really get it, that's what this whole process of bhakti gives us, a process to really get what this verse is about. And that process is, Prabhupada would say, work now, samadhi later. Because the process essentially is to apply ourselves enthusiastically, tapo divyam putraki in sattvam chudya jisman brahma sakyam chunam, to discipline ourselves, to do the austerity, to practice the sadhana. Bhakti yoga is given by our current link to the Parampara, Srila Prabhupada. Practice the sadhana, and work hard with enthusiasm to share this knowledge and process. So I'll read the verse again. Anuraga plutaha sarasa lila baloka pratilabdhamana Prajastriya Drigdir Anu Pravita Diovatastu Kilakritya Shresha. The damsels of Raja, after pastimes of laughter, humor, and exchanges of glances, were anguished when Krishna left them. They used to follow him with their eyes, and thus they sat down with stunned intelligence and could not finish their household duties. Thanks for your presence. Thank you. I welcome at this time, if anyone would like to share any realizations, ask any questions, comments or questions. Malini.
I have a question about something unrelated to the devotees, but something you said about cultivating the goodness.
Yeah.
And, I understand that cultivating the mother goodness help us to be peaceful, to practice spiritual life. And if I'm without the mother goodness, it's kind of difficult to focus the mind. Even I heard the class once that said the whole process of yoga, starting with the asana and then the prana and all that, is just in order to be capable of sitting and meditating on Krishna.
Yeah.
So, like that. And at the same time, in the cultivation of goodness, sometimes it seems that there is a misunderstanding that lead to lose complete sense of personality.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I understand we have our material personality and we have our spiritual personality, but individuality and spiritual and personality is naturally there.
Yeah.
Because Krishna likes varieties.
Yeah.
So, like I'm looking at that, like how to support people to be in a mode of goodness while also supporting whatever their personality, even so their personality is filtered through the three modes of matter and nature. Still there is individuality there that should be cultivated or kept.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks for going in that direction, Melanie. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yeah, so what you're saying is true, and it's true, and it represents a sort of risk of sattva, a risk of possible pitfall on the road back to Godhead, on the road to enlightenment. So goodness, sattva, it is a lot about Brahman realization. It truly is. If we in recent weeks in our Bhagavad Gita course, we're studying chapter 17, beginning of chapter 18. And if we look at, like understanding in the mode of goodness, knowledge in the mode of goodness, one's vision in the mode of goodness, it is about like the oneness of all spirit. It is.
So unattractive.
It is. And so that's nice, rather than kind of like, it's like above, like, well, I'm Russian, you're American, I'm black, you're white, I'm Jew, you're all that like distinction just based on material illusion that causes friction and war. So mode of goodness kind of has actual realization that actually we're all spirit, we're all so, in terms of the varnas, the different varna, and then you might say the most spiritually realized varna are the Brahmins. It's goodness. What does Brahmin means? One who's realized Brahman. So it's true. It's true. And then the possible risk or pitfalls, then we become complacent there, or we become uninterested or reject the possibility of the real banyan tree of spiritual variety, because we're rising above the mess and the mess and the forest fire of material variety. But then, okay, so but then to not realize, and then there's spiritual variety, and that's the source of a bliss that's trillions of times greater than just the oneness. All right, so then that's where right, and that's where philosophy can be helpful. Like if someone's coming to goodness through their yoga asanas or whatever through sattvic communication or whatever, that just like some of the points we visited today, okay, and we are eternally persons, not Vevaham Jatrinasam Natram Namejanadipa. Chaitanya Bhavishya Masavevayam Tatparam. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. It means eternal personhood. Okay, so yeah, so maybe someone that could be ourselves in some states of life. Yeah, that, okay, I'm rising above the material duality. Okay, and material relation, material form. But then what does the soul do? What does the soul do in the fully enlightened state? You just bliss out? No, what do you do? No, really. Prabhupada uses this could be example, just like we're covered. And if I'm thinking I'm this body and I'm thinking, all the things connect with the body, it's like spiritual illness. So Prabhupada used the example, just like if someone's physically ill, okay, then their activities are limited. So then when they go through convalescence, they get healed, they become healthy, then they just lay in bed? No, then they can work their job and they can go to social activities and they can do their hobbies, and then they live life with full gusto. It's not that then be complete. So similarly, yeah, mode of goodness means, yeah, you're gaining spiritual health, and because covered by Rajas and Tamas, our activities are very covered, the diamond's covered. Okay, so then what are the activities? What are the relationships of someone who's spiritually enlightened? And so, okay, because that's where philosophy, if someone can connect with that, philosophy and association can connect with. Otherwise, what do you do in that sattvic enlightenment? And it's like, you just sit there and it's like, you're going to get bored, and you're going to go back to your rajasic and tamasic activities, or maybe just, it's not going to be completely satisfying. We want to engage in activity. So here in this bhakti yoga process given by Vyasadeva, given by Srila Prabhupada, we have complete information about the activities of the soul in sattvic enlightenment. And if someone's interested and not complacent, again, and now there's something called Shuddha Sattva. Shuddha Sattva. What's that? So Sattva is a nice platform. Shuddha Sattva, that's bhakti. That's the activities of the soul in the fully enlightenment state, transcendental to the modes of nature, transcendental to even sattva. And sattva is a platform to go to Shuddha Sattva. We can share with them. And of course, there's philosophy, and then there's, they associate with Srila Prabhupada, they associate with followers of Prabhupada, and then they get attracted, like, yeah, this is more blissful than, whatever the meditation I've been doing. I remember a few months ago when Jivan Mukta was leading a class here, and he shared his history. He was doing a lot of them, and it was nice meditation. And he had at the center, I think it was California or whatever. It was nice. And then somehow or other, he went to the temple, I think was on Los Angeles. And then the devotees were like wild in kirtan, and there was like amazing prasadam feasts and like that. And it was like, this is nicer, like that, because then there's dancing in spiritual life. But if we're so like that.
Yeah, I was thinking the individuality. There is a risk, sattva, to lose individuality.
Yeah.
And of course, in tamas and raja, let's say we could take the example of filters.
Yeah.
So there's a blue filter, let's say it's tamas, and the red filters, that's raja. So there is an individuality, and it manifests to raja and tamas, but there is that individuality manifested, the individuality of the soul. And then when it comes to sattva, almost it's like that individually gets killed, almost.
Yeah.
Like it's yellow, but it becomes like yellow.
It becomes
and
faded,
then there is no more variety in it, almost.
Yeah.
And like you said, like maybe what I'm looking at is a misunderstanding of what the yellow means, because as you said, like dancing will be considered raja.
Right.
Like eating will be considered like eating big plate of prasadam, like Lord Caitanya will be considered tamas.
Right.
And roaring like Prabhupada roar like a lion, or like Lord Jesus Christ roar like,
Well, that's anger.
Anger.
Yeah.
So anger, and there is so much variety of personalities within Shuddha Sattva. And in Sattva, in Shuddha Sattva, I can see it.
Yeah.
But in sattva, it's almost difficult to see it.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that the tendency is people wanted to sattva is to disappear.
It's a tendency, and I think it's a tendency based on a misunderstanding of sattva.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate how to say that, like, even with Shuddha Sattva, we can understand a transcendental anger, transcendental flirtation. But I think it's a misunderstanding of even ordinary sattva. Because even ordinary sattva, the misunderstanding can mean, it means I'm always shanti, shanti, shanti.
Always the same.
Yeah. But no, actual sattva, not even Shuddha Sattva. Actual sattva means my range of choice is expanded, right? Actual sattva means that I'm able to connect with anger when I choose. So like actual sattva means I choose to get fierce to protect something dear, to protect boundaries. Actual sattva means I'm not controlled by fear. I'm not controlled by fear of anger. I'm not controlled by anger. It means like I'm at choice. I'm not a slave of my past. I'm not to use a personal growth phrase, my destiny does not need to equal my biography. That it's not just, well, this is the emotional legacy I got from my mother or my father or from, growing up. So just based on Rajas and Tamas, I'm like a robot like that. So sattva means full choice, able to connect with any state of being and able to shift it on a dime. And that includes joy and ecstasy and fear and being sober and being funny. That's actual sattva. So it's actually full of variety.
Yeah, I appreciate that definition, that the range of choices increase. Because what I see often is people come to sattva and it seems the range of choices decrease.
Yeah.
And then it's like confusing tamas.
Yeah.
Sattva and tamas are so close.
Yeah.
You know, it's like easy to get the raja out, but tamas and sattva, like it's so shanti.
Yeah.
That could be completely confused. But I like that definition, is that the range of choices, like, because the free will is more uncovered. The free will is not as covered by tamas and raja, that the range of choices increase. And then, of course, when the range of choices increase, the individuality and the personality is manifested even more, not less.
Yeah, even more. That's what we can, we can admit like the sattvic yogi meditating and then falling asleep. Sattva and tamas can be very connected.
Yeah.
And then, so sattva is like bringing to conscious awareness that which till now was not perceived. Like, oh, I didn't even know I could speak to my parent in that way. Now I understand. I've been carrying all this guilt, so people feel sorry for me. In terms of what we do, like
Wellness.
Yeah, like it's so something. Oh, okay, so I can drop the guilt, and I can get people's attention in a healthier way. And that's material sattva.
It's not repression.
Yeah, exactly. It's not repression. No, it's not. It's not the artificial. So just bring into conscious awareness that which was not perceived or experienced. Letting up the beach ball. It doesn't need to look dramatic. And then with that expanded awareness, I'm living in an expanded range of choice compared to Rajas and Tamas. And then Shuddha Sattva is Dhammayati.
I just want to add a thought that people cultivate the mode of goodness.
Yeah.
That I tend to see that that people start to access like compassion and desire to serve, and then through service there's just more relationship and personality. So it's just one comment related to your comment that maybe impersonalism can be cultivated in sattva, but I think it might be more rare that maybe in goodness people connect with compassion and service, like setting aside spirituality completely.
I didn't quite understand the last statement.
I guess I hear that I do see that there's a tendency in some circles to cultivate impersonalism, but I think that might be more rare than cultivating compassion and service, which increases relationship. Personalism, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, these things aren't nuanced. It's like, there's many facets, and so okay, I service completely. So sattva is the mode of expanded service. Completely, yes. That just like, okay, like a little baby is complete ignorance, pretty much. Yeah.
What you say is funny.
Yeah. Okay. So
They're good.
so the complete ignorance.
Ignorance. Oh, okay.
Little baby is complete ignorance, which means it's completely just about my sensory impulses need to be gratified now. There's no sense of serving something higher than self. Okay. That's it. Okay. Then as the child grows, okay, then you get some idea. It's like, oh, okay, here's a friend. Let me share a toy with a friend. Okay, there's some idea of like service, sharing. It depends how old you get, right? But basically, and that's why the ultimate is, and the one that evolves, and like, oh, let's maybe take the child, let's feed the homeless people, or you might even think, like that. It's a conception of like my baseball team, yeah, my teammates, my family. Okay, so then and then as one comes to higher and higher goodness, you have a conception of let's serve internationally, let's serve humanitarian, and the ultimate is metaphorically, let's serve the root of the tree, right? And that's serving Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We serve the root of the tree. Then all the baseball teams get served, all the nationalities, all the genders, like that, all the species. When we learn the art of serving the root of the tree, so that's sattva to its ultimate, Shuddha sattva, or beyond sattva to Shuddha sattva. So yeah, so as one comes from sattva, we're less and less self-absorbed. Means we're less and less material ego absorbed, and that culminates in really getting that. How do I serve everyone in the best way? And that comes to bhakti. Thanks for that.
Connected with your comment, Damayanti, in the Bhagavad Gita, I said, like, a personalist, when they come down, they do altruism, meaning the self, the society, the self, like that.
Yeah.
So it does lead to service.
Yeah.
It does lead to service. And that doesn't mean that service is personalism either. Yeah. But it does lead, even if when the unpersonalists fall down, and it can be falling down, from the Brahma Jyoti, but he also can be falling down on this level. They do service for humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives a progression. Like, okay, says like, serve me spontaneously with love and devotion. It's text 8, chapter 12. And then Krishna says, if you can't do that, if you're not ready for that, then follow the sadhana, follow sadhana, and you'll come to that spontaneous loving platform. He says, okay, you're not quite ready for that. Do karma yoga. Let's do whatever you work, and kind of maybe offer some of the results to me. And then Krishna goes through this progression, like a downward in the hierarchy. And then Krishna says, like, all right, like you're not ready to do like anything, even karma yoga. You're not ready to do bhakti yoga, karma yoga. He said, just serve something bigger than yourself. Serve your nation. So yeah, even though it might be material, but just that idea of serving something bigger than myself, the idea that will lead to like, oh, okay, well, how can I serve the boss of the boss? How can I serve the supreme? So at some point, just even if you serve something material that's bigger than yourself, that'll be helpful too.
Yeah, the mode of ignorance and passion are self-centered.
Yeah, self-centered.
More so.
Precisely. That was the baby, just complete lower modes. So there's no question of serving something other than my material illusion. Any other questions or comments? Hare Krishna. Thanks for joining us. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.